Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. I'm Gino Parati. If you're joining me live, welcome. We'll start in just a moment here. I will begin leading us through our format for today. We have a 20-minute learning session, and I also allow for 30 minutes of chat time. So if you just wanted to ask questions or chit chat towards the end, we will be doing that between 12:50 and 1 p.m. So first 20 minutes are just a welcome. I'm happy to see you if you're joining. Today's topic is on something called interpersonal immediacy. So before I get into that, if you are here already, welcome, as I've said. Go ahead and type in the chat where you're joining from. Today, I am joining from the Central Florida area. I am visiting my family. So I'm in my family's office space, different than my usual space in New York City. Let me know where you're joining from. It's always fun to see how interconnected we are around the US, where I'm broadcasting from, and certainly from around the world. That's the beauty of live broadcasting and social media. Hi, thank you. Hi, Sierra. Welcome back. Good to see you again. I'm going to put my glasses on. You're going to see a reflection because I got a window on the other side, which makes for good lighting, but doesn't make for good reflections in the glasses. But, it is what it is. I'm not in my studio today. So go ahead and get into the topic. Let's do that. What is interpersonal immediacy? Interpersonal immediacy are techniques that allow us to bridge three main types of distances. Good to see you, JB. Good to see you, Sierra. These distances, the three main types, are going to be psychological, physical, and emotional distances. And this becomes particularly relevant when we're broadcasting live, right? Because there's physical distance between us. We're not physically in the same space. And yet we have a lot of nonverbal cues as well as verbal cues to make us feel connected. So that's going to boost on the emotional and psychological immediacy. But these are important because ultimately, immediacy is about liking. Liking builds to trust. Trust is foundational to relationships. Relationships, I argue, are the point of being human. That's the reason why we do what we do. But since this is LinkedIn and it's a more professional platform, focusing the idea of relationships and professional life, it's how things get done. That's how we build trust. Payments are often a promise to pay. So when we sign a contract, there is some legal backing, but ultimately it's defining the rules and the relationships, the agreed upon terms. So again, backtracking that, this idea of interpersonal immediacy, which will be our focus for our learning session today, is going to be about the communication tools that you can use to build the warmth, the connection, which builds liking, which builds trust, which becomes the foundation of the relationship, and all things get easier and better when we're in healthy relationships. That's going to be the focus for today. A little bit about myself for those of you that don't know me, whether you're joining live right now. Again, if you're joining live, let me know where you're from, like we see Sarah did and JB did. If you're watching on video and you don't know me, my background is in the field of interpersonal communication. My degree, my master's, is from the University of Central Florida in Orlando. And our field is a combination of psychology, sociology, and anthropology. So, to put it more succinctly, we study the human animal, specifically in the context of relationships. So, when human beings get together, whether it's in one on one relationships or as large as national, international, and organizational relationships, how does that impact the human being? How does that impact the overall relationship? So, it's pretty interesting stuff. So, that's my field. I've taught at several universities, including University of Central Florida. And then when I moved to New York City, I have taught for Columbia University, the Fashion Institute of Technology, and Baruch College as well. And of course, a lot of different guest lectures. On the business side, this is real brief because I want to get into our topic for today. But on the business side, my background is in learning and development, and I spent 10 years working in a variety of industries in corporate America, including real estate management, sports management, and banking as well. And I love to help people grow and develop. I'm doing these broadcasts through Right Brain Journeys, a company that I created back in 2013 to help people grow both personally and professionally, to develop these communication skills that we're talking about, like interpersonal immediacy, ultimately to help us have better lives through better relationships. So that's Frame It. Going into the learning session for today, the interpersonal immediacy allows you to have better relationships. Better communication allows you to be more influential, which is one of the classes that I teach, influence and persuasion. Influence is not coercion. That's a clear distinction that we start at the very beginning. Influence is about ethics. It's about laying out good intentions, helping people see what are good choices for them, and structuring a message in a way that helps them have that choice be easy and reciprocal. It's good for you and it's good for me. And ultimately that's a healthy relationship. It's good for both of us. We're working together to create good outcomes. And that's what these interpersonal immediacy techniques will allow us to do. So why do we want others to feel this immediacy? Well, it's about being seen and being heard. And I grew up watching the Oprah Winfrey Show back in the day when she was still live on the air with her daily show. And I remember Oprah saying, after all of the broadcasts that she had done, all of the thousands of people that she had talked to over her 25-year career, that ultimately her assessment was, at the end of the day, people want to be seen and people want to be heard. And when she said that, it really stuck with me. And then when I studied my field and we study human behavior, I would agree with her assessment. At the end of the day, people want to be seen, people want to be heard in their most foundational relationships because that's how we feel valued as human beings. So that's the key to what I'm talking about today. Interpersonal immediacy, I said, is about this connection that allows you to bridge distances, whether physical, psychological, or emotional distances. And that allows people to feel seen and it allows people to feel heard, hence better relationships. Why do we want other people to feel seen and heard? Well, it creates better relationships. It allows us to be more empathetic so they feel valued, but we also learn about their perspective. When we are connecting with them, we also start to feel what they feel. We sync to one another. So yes, we are helping connect them to us, but we're also getting connected to them, and our world gets bigger. We learn more. We understand more. It allows us to then, as I said, be more influential or persuasive because we know that emotion drives behavior. So when people feel valued, when people feel seen, when people feel heard, behavior is going to be now driven from the more positive sides of emotion. Instead of motivating through fear, we can motivate through empowerment. And the outcomes are going to be different. I would argue better for everybody when you're operating from a sphere of positive emotions. I'll do a quick aside. Of course, all of our emotions have evolved for a good reason. So fear has its place. Fear can be a beneficial emotion if we're being chased. There's good reason to be fear. It pumps up our adrenaline and our cortisol, makes us move faster. And if we have to fight, it makes us stronger in that moment. So fear does have its place, but I'm speaking, of course, in the professional context. And when you lead and manage, operating from a more positive place as often as possible tends to have better outcomes. So that's why we want other people to feel seen and feel heard. What are some ways then to reduce the distance between people, especially when we're speaking today through virtual platforms with people? Some of you I know in person joining today, some of you I've never met. Hi to the LinkedIn user who's joining. I don't see your name, but you said hi, so I'm glad you're here. For those of you I haven't met physically in person, how are we feeling like we know one another? What's the motivation to connect with me other than just an exchange of information? I'm talking about a topic that seems interesting to you. Well, that's available in many formats. There's a lot of teachers, there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of books. You can get this information from a lot of places. But wanting to get it from me means that there's something about the way that I deliver, the way that I speak to you across distance through this virtual medium that connects with you. It makes me more influential because you want to hear it coming out of my mouth. There's something that enables me to make this feel more immediate and myself to feel more immediate. So these are the quick tips. Of course, it's just real quick. So the three distances I mentioned earlier are physical, psychological, and emotional. So physical distance, when you're actually in a room together. So for me, when I'm in a classroom or when I'm speaking at an organization, at a convention, if you're up on stage and you're speaking to an audience of 300 or more people, which I've done several times, it can be a little bit difficult because you're up on a stage. And even though we're physically in the same space, because I'm on a stage and if I'm given a podium, there's now a physical object blocking me from the audience. So yes, we're in the same room, but our ability to physically connect becomes impacted. However, we can then try to reduce that. So number one would be, if you are physically in a room, move away the podiums, which for some speakers can be scary because you want to hold on for dear life because you're feeling nervous and you're anchoring yourself to this podium. If you can remove that physical barrier and come around and speak to your audience, you're already moving closer. And why is it of value? Because our bodies give off energy. And when your bodies are closer to one another, it's more engaging. It's more, the word is arousing. And I know some people think of that in more of a romantic or sexual context. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm using arousing just as attention getting. So when someone physically comes near you, walks close to you, we feel the energy of their body, whether it's vibration, we can feel the footsteps. And when the closer it is, the stronger that vibration is. We can hear their breathing. We can feel the warmth of their body if they're really standing close to us. So physically, our bodies are near one another. It's more attention grabbing. So that can be a helpful technique. For example, in the classroom, if a student's not paying attention and they're kind of falling asleep and they're sitting in the front row, all a teacher has to do is just walk and stand close to that student. We don't have to say their name. We don't have to touch them. We don't have to talk louder. We just have to move closer to them. And a lot of the times it will wake that person up because our voice is louder. Since we're closer, the vibration of our voice is stronger when we're standing next to them. They can feel the presence of our body and it wakes them back into consciousness. So that's what I mean by connecting. That is one technique that you can use to bridge the physical distance, is actually move closer to one another. In the beginning, it's also very helpful, at least pre-pandemic. People have different ideas about touching now since we've gone through the COVID pandemic. But shaking hands in a Western culture is a great way to bridge that physical distance. When I was a corporate trainer, I loved to show up early to the room before any of the attendees got there. My room would be completely set up, just as if you were coming to a party at my house. I want it done, so when you walk in, the experience is already there. I want to be at the door. I want to greet you. Welcome to this learning session. I want to shake your hand. That's a connection that we can make right from the start. And when you have that physical touch, 1, 2, 3, handshake, and then it's done, you're already starting to sync energies and create that likability. And the theory behind that is to be more engaging when they have to listen to you, even if they're sitting in the back of the room, far away from you. I have a couple more points to make. Feel free to type any questions that you have in the chat. If I don't get to them in the moment, we'll address it at 12:50-ish here when I'm done with the actual lecture portion. Another thing that you can do for physical immediacy is, when you can't get super close, is switching the gear over to psychological aspects. So physical closeness can be very engaging. And when that's removed, whether it's virtual like we're doing today, or whether you're speaking to an audience of 300 people, you're never going to get to physically shake the hand or touch the person in the back room with your body or stand near them. So what you're going to have to do is bridge that distance, or bridge the virtual distance, with these psychological and emotional techniques. So the first psychological technique, and the one I'm going to cover in our short learning session today, is eye contact. You see me looking at the camera quite a bit, and this is a skill that I have practiced. It can feel a little bit awkward when you're first doing it because I don't see any eye contact, but I know that you do because I've watched plenty of videos from people. And when I look at the camera, it makes it feel like I'm looking at you from your perception. And here's why it's important. So whether I'm looking at you across the room or whether I'm looking at you through the camera, research has shown that when you lock eyes, when we look at each other in the eyes for 2 to 3 seconds, our brainwave patterns start to sync. So we become more similar. We're on the same wavelength. And we use even that terminology in our everyday life to feel more connected or feel like we're gelling and we're clicking with someone. We're on the same wavelength. As the speaker, as the teacher, as the leader, if you're the one talking like I am right now, it's even more powerful because it's my voice that's filling the room. We're making eye contact, we're syncing, but whom are we syncing to? As the speaker, you're syncing to my energy, my thought pattern, my vibration, literally the speed of my voice. So if I was in a hurry and frantic, that would show up and you would likely start feeling hurried and frantic. If I want you to feel more calm and centered and empowered, which is what I want you to feel for this lesson, because it'll help you absorb the information better, then I need to speak in a way that allows you to sync to that energy. So the sound of my voice is lower, confident, I have a tendency to speak fast. I'm trying to slow it down, but not too slow. Still needs to sound energetic, then that I'm passionate and enthusiastic because I want to charge you with that type of energy. So eye contact becomes really important to bridge a physical distance, and that's a psychological connection. I'm syncing you to my brainwave pattern. The third way to create interpersonal immediacy, especially when you can't do it physically, is through emotional connection. And I have two suggestions for how you can do that. So, when you can't physically be close to one another, the first thing to do is to talk about something that is automatically important to the listener. When you do that, there's already emotion attached around it. That's what makes it important. I want to show up. I'm already internally motivated to learn about this topic. It's interesting to me. So if you speak about something that is emotionally relevant to them, the topic is connected to them already, you're halfway there. They're already attracting the audience. The second one is something that I did a little bit about in the beginning when I told you about my background, and it's called self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is a technique that we have learned from research. When you start telling people about some personal things, but not too personal, because you don't want to be an oversharer, that can get very awkward very quickly and actually damage the relationship and create distance so that people protect themselves. But a healthy amount that's appropriate for the interaction. We're on LinkedIn, so I'm going to keep things professional. Even when I talk about personal stuff, it's going to be tied back to professional reasons as to why I'm disclosing that. Because we got to know why we're connecting on this particular platform. I always joke there's a big difference between what I talk about in my classroom, in my seminars, in my courses, than if we went and grabbed a beer as friends. Totally different context. So the amount of self-disclosure is going to be different. The research shows that when we disclose at that appropriate level, it opens the door, and the other people, the listeners, tend to reciprocate back with the same information. So I told you my background. If we're able to do more engagement here, and I see Sierra, and I see Jacqueline, and I see our LinkedIn user, and I see JB, and I say, well, tell me about your backgrounds. You would likely disclose at the same level. And so again, we're starting to sync, and we're doing something in reciprocity at the same amount back. So that's a good technique that gives you some influence as the speaker, as the leader, as the manager. You can decide the level of comfort, the level of disclosure that you want to happen in this conversation, and you role model it right from the beginning. And you can create a connection with people. I recommend you do it at the beginning because you're laying the social, emotional climate of your discussion, even of the room, because it changes the energy in the room to set people up for the next conversation, the learning that's going to happen. So a quick recap of those three: physical distance, things like shaking hands, standing close to people can be a good way to bridge the physical distance. When that's unavailable, use psychological techniques like eye contact, holding for 2 to 3 seconds. Staring, PS, is not good. So 2 to 3 seconds, and then you get to look away. I have my little notes down here, so I'm looking down to see what my next talking point is. Then I come back, hold eye contact, 2 to 3 seconds, come back down, look to the side, express. So eye contact, 2 to 3 seconds, and the emotional techniques. One emotional technique is picking a topic that's already emotionally interesting to the audience, and then using self-disclosure at the beginning to create connection between people. You can bridge these distances. Okay, we're almost into the Q&A section. Wanted to say, though, that we can use this also in reverse, and you already do, and you may not be conscious of it. Bringing consciousness to people's communication is my main mission. This is how I help people create more enjoyable lives and better relationships, by choosing our communication behaviors, which allows you to create your life, or at least co-create your life. And then all of a sudden things are working out better. Hi, Carla. Awesome. I'll get to that in just a moment. Let me take a look here at yours in just a moment here. We can create distance by breaking eye contact. So when you're on a crowded subway car, like a lot of us in New York City experience during rush hour, pre-pandemic, you are body to body smushed. It's really physically uncomfortable and can also just be socially very, very awkward and uncomfortable. You accept it because you need to get from point A to point B during rush hour. But you don't stare at each other when you're pressed up against one another. You create distance by avoiding eye contact because you can't create physical distance. We do it in elevators, same deal, crowded elevators. You may be touching shoulder to shoulder, but you don't start talking or making eye contact with the stranger. And then men, we know this from being in the bathrooms at the urinals when there's a bunch of urinals on the wall and there are no partitions between them for privacy. There's a general rule that in most situations, when possible, you leave an empty urinal between you. So there's some physical space for privacy. But if you're at intermission, for example, at a Broadway show, it's about timing. So sorry, you're going to use every available urinal. In that case, the general rule is we are physically too close for comfort. So you do not talk to a stranger while you're standing at the urinal, especially when there's not a partition. Those are all examples of how we use psychological, emotional, or physical immediacy to create distance when things are too close for comfort. Okay, Carla, let me get back. Oh, awesome, Marie. Good. Welcome. Glad you're enjoying the topic. Carla, there's one more way we can connect, pretty much unknown. We can use the power of our electromagnetic field to connect people, even to a room of over 3, very strong. Carla, I'm going to talk about a few more things if you have a moment to chat. Were you on and did you hear me say about syncing to our energy as a speaker? If you did hear that, can you let me know whether that is the same or different? Carla does some really interesting work with brain scans. So she literally takes a look from the inside and lets us know how things are coming out, what's going on in our brains while we communicate. So it's pretty interesting. If it's something different or you have a resource, Carla, feel free to drop that into the chat. So a quick recap ultimately of what did we learn today? We learned about the topic of interpersonal immediacy. We learned that immediacy is the ability to connect with other people, and connecting make them feel close to us. Connecting builds trust. Connecting builds liking. Liking builds trust. Trust is the foundation of relationships, and everything, whether it's personal or professional, ultimately is about a relationship. Everything we do is in service to other human beings. So it helps you create better relationships. We learned that there are 3 types of distances: physical, psychological, and emotional. And I gave you some quick tips to either bridge the distance and make people feel close to you using those techniques, or in the case of subways, elevators, and bathrooms, when you have to be physically close and you don't want to be, how do you create distance? You can do that also psychologically and emotionally by reversing the techniques that I gave you. Okay, awesome. Jill. Oh, hi, Jill. Great. Yeah, it's coming up as an unknown, but I'm happy that you're here. Good. Glad that you're joining. Carla, we have a few more moments. If you're able to type, you may be typing. Let me tell you how you can continue to learn. So the next LinkedIn Live is going to be Wednesday, March the 2nd, 12 to 12:30 p.m. The topic are going to be listening styles. And I chose this because listening is one of the most important things that we can do. And even as a communication teacher, it is the least practiced, taught about communication skill. It's the communication skill we use most often and often poorly, and it's the skill that we practice least. Think about the public speaking classes, which are foundational. You have like one unit on listening, and the entire class is dedicated to talking, to speaking. So even we don't teach about this stuff. Awesome, Carla. I'll see that and I'll read that in just a moment. So I'm going to tell you about these 4 listening styles. There's a self-assessment that I'll provide you the link to as well, which will allow you to see what your dominant listening style is. Again, once you know the listening style and the listening style of the other person, it's not that one is better. There's an appropriate situation that each one is better. So I want you to be aware of what you default to, and then that way you can be more conscious and choose based on the situation. I know I tend to automatically fall into this type of listening style and just do it unconsciously. Is my normal way of doing it the best, or should I be using one of the others? So that's coming up March 2nd, Wednesday, 12 to 12:30 p.m. Other ways you can learn with me, I invite you to follow my monthly newsletter here on LinkedIn. It's called Conscious Communication. I embed some of these replay videos, but I also give you other resources connected to the topics and give you more deep information. My whole point of my work is to educate, empower, and inspire people to be able to communicate consciously. So that's a tool. If you want to go even deeper and gain bigger personal insights, I do one-on-one coaching. So we can talk about packages. They start at a minimum of 3. We need that level of engagement to actually get some results, but it's customized. I work with you. What are your goals? And I even customize your curriculum. So it's not just show up and we talk. There is readings that you do to help bring these ideas alive, because I want to educate you. I want to empower you to be responsible for your own life. And I want you to be inspired to create the future that you want. I have some courses as well, public speaking course and a nonverbal course that I'm developing should be available summer, fall. And finally, I'm available for organizational workshops and speaking engagements. So if you're listening and you're working for a company, feel free to introduce me. I would love that. I'd appreciate it. Most likely it's going to be either your direct boss or HR, learning and development offices are great places to connect, saying, hey, I found someone that could be really helpful. So I'd appreciate introductions. That would be awesome. Carla, let me go back. Okay. I did not hear it. Okay. Sounds like the same. So awesome. Carla, if you have an article or a blog written and you would like to drop that in for us, that would be fantastic. Or, maybe you and I can collaborate on one of these in the future. So let's chit chat. Carla and I have known one another, so I really respect her work, and that could be a cool thing. Fantastic. I'm looking for any other comments. We're in our final 4 minutes. Comments or questions about interpersonal immediacy. This could be even a personal question. You may be wondering how you can personally do it in a situation. Now, yesterday was Valentine's Day, for example, and if you weren't all right, awesome, Carla. We'll chit chat offline. If you weren't able to physically be with the person that you love yesterday, the people that you love, certainly Valentine's Day is not all about romantic love. If you were not able to be physically together, you likely sent something or it was a phone call. So you used your voices to connect. You may have sent gifts or cards. So the physical card, as well as your writing, the vibration of your hand reflected your presence for people. These are all techniques that you use to bridge a physical distance to make the people that you love feel connected to you. Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Sierra. Good. Jacqueline, good to see you. Good. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm thinking there aren't any additional questions. I'll hang out just for another moment. Again, next LinkedIn Live is Wednesday, March the 2nd, 12 to 12:30 p.m. Feel free to invite others if you would like. I love these things because I'm all about concise learning. Let's boil it down, give good quality in as short period as possible. Good, Jill. I'm glad you popped in as well. Good. Please come again and share it with other people. When I download this, the video will be available, so I'll share it on my page. JB, thank you. Always good to see you, JB. Feel free to share it within your network. That's helpful to me as well, so I greatly appreciate it. And if people can benefit from the work that I'm sharing, that's the point. Let's get it out of academic hands and into the hands of the everyday person, because it changes lives, and that's what I want to see happen. Changes lives for the better. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end it. Wish you a good rest of the week. Be well. See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.